John Searle's book Rationality in Action builds upon his ongoing philosophical exploration, which has encompassed speech act theory, philosophy of mind and action, and the creation of social reality. This book represents his most extensive and intricate work within the realm of philosophy of action. In the first chapter of his book, John Searle introduces a viewpoint on rationality that he challenges and discusses throughout the text. This perspective, known as the classical model of rationality, is defined by 6 key assumptions. 1. Actions, when rational, stem from beliefs and desires. 2. Rationality is about following specific rules that distinguish rational from irrational thoughts and behaviors. 3. Rationality is a distinct cognitive capacity. 4. Cases of apparent weakness of will, acrasia, only occur when there is a problem with the mental factors leading to the action. 5. Practical reasoning begins with identifying the agent's primary goals, desires, objectives, and purposes, which are not subject to rational constraints themselves. 6. The entire system works only if the set of primary desires is consistent. Searle argues that all these 6 postulates are problematic, and refuting them paves the way for a better understanding. However, he criticizes this classical model in ways that might not entirely hold up, suggesting it might be a bit of a straw man argument. While some of its ideas may have been taken more seriously in the past, it's not widely supported in current philosophy. Nowadays, theoretical approaches to action are rooted in the belief-desire-intention framework, where intentions and commitments play a major role. Topics like belief-desire psychology and the concept of human selves as bundles of experiences, which Searle touches on, aren't as prominent in modern philosophy of action. Due to these shifts and limited space, the classical model won't be extensively discussed, and the focus will be on Searle's positive ideas. This book embodies Searle's distinctive style, featuring both its strengths and areas that may be considered less strong. It's written in an engaging manner and is accessible to a broad audience, although it may not be geared towards a complete beginner. The text is packed with intriguing arguments and introduces some fresh concepts, particularly regarding non-sufficient causation of action, and a comprehensive exploration of reasons for action. The primary contributions lie in these 2 areas, with the discussion on reasons, especially desire-independent reasons, likely to have enduring significance in the field of philosophy of action. In the first part of Searle's book, he delves into the causation of actions. He argues that an agent's desires and beliefs don't directly cause their decisions and intentions, at least from their own perspective. This is because of the concept of free will. The agent has the freedom to choose which desires and beliefs will guide their actions. This leads to what Searle calls the first gap. In his theory of action, an intentional action usually arises from the agent's prior intention, which causally leads to the action without making it an absolute necessity. The action itself involves both the agent's intention in action and the behavior it prompts. The second gap appears between the prior intention and the intention in action, a gap made evident by instances of weakness of will. The third gap emerges between the initiation of the action and its completion. Searle defines the gap as the phenomenon where we don't typically experience the stages of our thoughts and voluntary actions as having completely sufficient conditions, nor do they set entirely sufficient conditions for the next stage. While all of these gaps are familiar concepts and have been extensively discussed in existing literature, Searle introduces a potentially new idea: that there's only non-sufficient causation between the prior intention and the intention in action. This notion, however, may present some challenges. For instance, we can consider agency and action as fundamental and unbreakable concepts. An agent is seen as a core entity with two central aspects. One is action, and the other is the motivating reason behind that action. These elements can vary, while the agent remains the entity in which these changes occur. Now, let's consider a typical scenario where an agent, A, intentionally performs an action, X, due to a reason, R. In a practical instance, X could be opening a window, and the reason, R, might be understood as the intended state of the room being well ventilated, considering the believed causal link between a ventilated room and an open window. Searle adopts an externalist approach to reasons, which I find generally agreeable. Let's refer to the partly reason-generated motivational causal state that can be understood as causing the agent's action. This motivational state encompasses desires, beliefs, and possibly emotions, with the agent's intention to perform X being the most crucial component. While I acknowledge that the agent's will is free and, therefore, their desires and beliefs don't directly cause the intention, in the case of successful action, the gap is bridged by including the prior in M. Regarding the second gap, action X was successfully carried out without any weakness of will. Therefore, in this specific case, the second gap was bridged. At present, we need not be concerned with the third gap at all, as it has been stipulated to have been bridged in this case. At this point, we can adopt an external perspective and assert that the because in the action description concerning A's action X is both normative and causal. Now, seemingly contrary to Searle's position, in a sense, the agent's motivational state, in this particular case where the gaps were bridged, was a sufficient cause of the action. In other words, there is a sense of sufficient singular causation here. In this specific situation, it is indeed true that if the agent hadn't opened the window, they wouldn't have intended to ventilate the room and open the window. This perspective may appear to contradict Searle's account. However, it's important to note that what's at stake here is the agent's acceptance of the intended state represented by R as their sufficient reason. To assert that sufficient causation occurs within the agent, we must assume that the agent intentionally controls the situation. Broadly speaking, the causation occurs against the backdrop of an actively engaged agent who is in charge. This prevents, for instance, the kind of compulsive behaviors that Searle discusses, where there is sufficient causation, but no intentional causation. Sufficiency in this context denotes the sufficient singular causal bringing about of an event. The concept of agent-constrained causation offers a fresh alternative to the options Searle presents as potential solutions for the free will problem in Chapter 9, which he examines from a third-person perspective. In this context, he considers combinations involving 1. Psychological indeterminism and neurobiological determinism, and 2. Psychological indeterminism and neurobiological indeterminism. What my idea could potentially provide, once fully developed, is a scenario of psychological determinism, coupled with either neurobiological determinism or, conceivably, even mild neurobiological indeterminism at a micro level. His central contribution is his account of reasons for action. He asserts that all reasons are propositionally structured entities, which can be factual occurrences like the fact that it's raining, or intentional states in the form of desires, such as my wish to stay dry. Additionally, reasons can be propositionally structured entities that aren't facts or intentional states, such as obligations, commitments, requirements, and needs. On page 133, reasons are further defined, with Searle stipulating that the agent X must regard the set of statements S that state the reason as not articulating causally sufficient conditions for carrying out the action A. This is doubly problematic. First, an agent might bring their umbrella because they perceive the sufficient reason and cause for doing so as the imminent rain. Secondly, it presupposes that the agent possesses a level of sophistication to comprehend this conceptual account, which could be a considerable assumption for children, who may still act for a reason. Desire-independent reasons constitute a significant category of. In these cases, the reason stands as the foundation of the desire, with the desire not serving as the grounds for the reason. For instance, when an agent makes a promise, recognizing this commitment will generate their desire to fulfill it. Yet, the reason is the basis for the desire, even if the agent had desired to make the promise in the first place. Searle offers valuable insights, albeit with some problematic aspects, on desire-independent reasons. However, I limit my critique to one specific point, which pertains to his proof of altruism. Searle poses the following question in his discussion of altruism. Can there be rationally binding desire-independent altruistic reasons for action? I won't delve into all the details, but I'll consider his argument for the existence of altruistic reasons, which I find to be not fundamentally incorrect, but somewhat misplaced. Let's examine Searle's linguistic argument on pages 161-2. The initial step is this. I'm in pain, so I state I'm in pain. Because pain is a general term in language, it holds the same truth conditions for all individuals. Next, my pain gives rise to a need. Thus, I state, I need help because I'm in pain. Similar to the first step, this generalizes to X needs help because X is in pain, for any X. The third step leads us to the statement, because I'm in pain and need help, you have a reason to help me. Correspondingly, this generalizes to any person's X and Y. Here we have an argument for a desire-independent reason to behave altruistically. Desire independence stems from Searle's assumption that pains and needs in general serve as such reasons. Searle states on page 163 that the universality constraint that moves us from egoism to strong altruism is already embedded in the universality of language. However, I believe the linguistic point isn't the critical aspect here. The real weight of this argument lies in the assertion that needs create desire-independent reasons. No semantic assent is needed to discern the argument's trajectory. Furthermore, on page 191, Searle contends that recognition of the validity of the reason is enough to guarantee that the person acts on the reason. This either seems to imply that nearly all of us are altruists, or alternatively, the analysis employs a notion of recognition that is excessively stringent. Searle is both thought-provoking and challenging, providing compelling arguments for his own positive viewpoints. The book effectively demonstrates how naturalism can be harmoniously integrated with a comprehensive view of human agency and the self. This accomplishment can be viewed as a commendable achievement.